Imagine the air thick with tension, the scent of damp earth and distant smoke hanging heavy. Picture a young soldier, huddled over a crackling radio set in the dead of a war-torn night. Now imagine the static parting, not for the expected bark of command or the chatter of enemy reconnaissance, but for a ghost, a whisper of code carried on the airwaves, seemingly broadcast from a train that had vanished into the very fog of war itself. Welcome, truth seekers and adventurers, into the annals of hidden history, right here on our channel. We gather today not just to recount events, but to explore the shadows where history meets mystery. Prepare yourselves, because we're about to embark on a journey into the heart of World War II, uncovering a story so strange, so elusive, it has lingered only in fragments and whispers. The tale of a phantom train signal, and a lost Morse code remembered by a single soul. If you believe some secrets refuse to stay buried, hit that subscribe button and the notification bell, because the revelations ahead might just shift your understanding of the past. We promise you'll want to be here for the conclusion. The year is 1944. Allied forces pushed deeper into occupied Europe, facing fierce resistance. Every shadow could conceal an enemy. Every radio silence could mask a threat. In a makeshift listening post, perhaps nestled in the dense, dripping woods of the Ardennes or overlooking a strategic valley in France, a young signals operator named Arthur Davies strained his ears against the constant hiss and crackle. His job was monotony punctuated by terror, hours listening to silence, followed by frantic bursts of coded traffic that could mean life or death for unseen comrades. He was diligent, meticulous, logging every scrap of transmission, however faint. One night, amidst a biting wind that rattled the canvas flaps of his tent, it happened. A new signal faded in, clearer than the usual distant chatter. It was Morse code, rhythmic and deliberate. Dot dash dot, pause dash dash dot pause. But something was immediately wrong. The cadence felt off. The structure wasn't standard Army, Navy, or even Luftwaffe code that he'd been trained to recognize. It seemed almost archaic, yet broadcast with modern clarity. He adjusted the frequency, trying to pinpoint the source. Impossible. The signal seemed to drift, echoing as if originating from multiple points along a nearby, long-disused railway line, a line the maps showed as destroyed years prior. Arthur meticulously transcribed the repeating sequence. He checked his code books, then checked them again. Nothing. He reported it up the chain of command. The initial response was dismissive. Atmospheric interference, Davies. Faulty equipment. Probably just some old-timer messing with a spark gap transmitter somewhere. But Arthur felt a chill that had nothing to do with the autumn air. The signal was too precise, too persistent for random interference. It pulsed with an unnerving regularity, like a ghostly heartbeat on the airwaves. It spoke of intention, of a message desperate to be heard, yet cloaked in a language seemingly forgotten by the war raging around it. He couldn't shake the feeling that this phantom signal was connected to the hushed rumors circulating among the troops, whispers of supply trains vanishing without a trace, of clandestine operations gone dark, of sections of track believed abandoned, but showing inexplicable signs of recent use. Could this code be a key, a distress call from the lost, or something else entirely? The weight of the unknown settled upon him. This repeating, cryptic message, broadcast from nowhere and everywhere along a dead railway line, felt like the beginning of a profound and unsettling mystery. He copied the code again, the strange sequence of dots and dashes etching themselves not just onto his notepad, but into his memory. What message could be so vital, yet so hidden, broadcast by a ghost train through the heart of a war zone? What secrets yearned to be unearthed from the static of the past? Share your initial thoughts and theories in the comments below. We're just getting started on this incredible journey. Days bled into weeks, but the phantom signal lingered in Arthur Davies' thoughts far more persistently than it did on the airwaves. While his superiors remained unconvinced, dismissing his logs as anomalies born from the stress and static of war, Arthur couldn't shake the rhythmic ghost from his mind. The code was too clear, too deliberate. It was a message, he was certain, transmitted for a reason, even if its origin and meaning remained shrouded in fog as thick as the morning mist that often clung to the nearby valley. Driven by an instinct he couldn't explain, Arthur began his own quiet investigation, poring over maps during his rare off-duty hours, cross-referencing the supposed location of the signal with known troop movements, supply routes, and reported enemy activity. The official military maps showed the old railway line as inactive, partially dismantled even before the war, and certainly bombed into uselessness since. Yet, the signal pulsed along its path. One damp afternoon, under the guise of stretching his legs, Arthur ventured closer to the rusted tracks overgrown with weeds. He expected decay, silence. What he found was subtle dissonance. In one sheltered section, the undergrowth seemed recently disturbed. Branches snapped, the ground subtly tam-pressed as if by heavy, repetitive passage. Near an embankment, half hidden beneath fallen leaves, he found a small, unusually shaped metal shard. Not military issue, not like any railway component he recognized. It felt cold, alien. Was it debris? Or something dropped? His search for answers led him to the skeletal remains of a small, bombed-out village near the railway line. Amidst the rubble of what might have been a station master's office, he unearthed a water-damaged, pre-war regional survey map. This map, drawn with meticulous civilian detail, showed something the military charts omitted: a short, almost invisible spur line branching off the main track, disappearing into a densely wooded hillside marked only with an old quarry symbol. A quarry long abandoned, according to official records. Could this be the source? A hidden siding? A tunnel entrance swallowed by time and trees? The map offered a tantalizing possibility, a physical location, potentially linked to the ethereal signal. The phantom signal wasn't constant. It appeared sporadically, usually for an hour or two after midnight, then vanished as silently as it came. One moonless night, compelled by his discovery, Arthur crept towards the area indicated on the old map. He carried no radio, only his service flashlight, dimmed with tape. As he neared the wooded hillside, the air grew unnaturally still. Then he heard it, not through headphones, but through the soles of his boots, a deep, distant rumble vibrating through the earth. It was the unmistakable sound of a heavy train, moving slowly, cautiously, when no train should be. He dove into the thorny undergrowth, heart pounding. Minutes later, shapes moved through the darkness on the unseen track line, low. Indistinct silhouettes glimpsed between the trees, accompanied by muffled mechanical groans and, strangely, what sounded like hushed voices speaking in a language he couldn't place. Definitely not German or French. Then, as quickly as it came, the sound faded into the distance, leaving only silence and the smell of damp earth, perhaps mixed with the faintest, almost imagined, scent of coal smoke. He returned to his post, shaken but more resolute. This was no ghost of static. It was real. That night, the signal returned. But was it different? Arthur strained, listening intently. Yes, a subtle change in the repetition, a slight variation in the spacing of one sequence. He quickly noted it down. Was it a response? An evolution of the message? He spent hours comparing the core structure to every code variation he could think of. Old telegraphic abbreviations, naval flag signals adapted to Morse, even experimental pre-war communications protocols. It was in a dusty appendix of an obscure railway engineering journal, borrowed from a fellow operator, that he found a flicker of recognition. A proposed, highly complex signaling system from the late 1930s, designed for automated cargo tracking. A system deemed too expensive and complicated, never widely adopted. The structure had similarities, complex groupings unlike anything military. What if? His sergeant noticed his preoccupation, the late hours spent hunched over notes. "Davies," he said one morning, his voice low but firm. "Whatever rabbit hole you're digging, fill it in. There are things moving in this war, things you don't need to understand. Stick to your duties." The warning was clear, laced with an unusual gravity, but it was too late. Arthur felt he was on the verge of something monumental, terrible, or wondrous. He didn't know. He felt the weight of the lone survivor in the title he didn't know he'd one day inspire. If you've journeyed this far with Arthur into the fog of war and mystery, comment Phantom Signal below. Your presence here fuels our search for answers. Could this abandoned quarry hold the key? What cargo necessitates a ghost train and a forgotten code? The sergeant's warning echoed in Arthur Davies' ears, a counterpoint to the phantom Morse code, now seemingly imprinted on his soul. He tried to heed the caution, focusing on his duties, burying himself in the routine of military life. But the mystery wouldn't let him go. The rumble felt in the earth, the fleeting shapes in the dark, the metallic shard, the hidden spur line on the old map, and above all, the cryptic signal itself. They were pieces of a puzzle demanding assembly. He felt watched, not necessarily by his own side with overt suspicion, but with a subtle, unnerving awareness. Shifts were rearranged slightly. His off-duty movements seemed to coincide with unexpected patrols, and casual questions from fellow soldiers sometimes felt subtly probing. Was it paranoia? Or was the veil of secrecy surrounding the phantom train beginning to react to his curiosity? Driven by the need to understand, Arthur dedicated his precious free moments, often sacrificing sleep, to the experimental railway code he'd stumbled upon. It was complex, designed for automated systems, using nuances of timing and pulse length that standard military Morse ignored. Working with pencil nubs under a shielded blanket long after lights out, he painstakingly compared his transcriptions of the phantom signal to the diagrams in the engineering journal. The variations he'd noted were key. They weren't errors, they were modifiers, changing the meaning of the core blocks. Slowly, agonizingly, like teasing out rusted gears, a fragment began to yield. A short, repeating sequence, when filtered through the logic of the railway code, didn't spell out words, but seemed to form an identifier. Unit 731 / cargo status. Active / track Omega. Unit 731. The designation meant nothing to him in an Allied context, but it sent an inexplicable shiver down his spine. Track Omega. Was that the code name for the hidden spur line? Active cargo. The phrase hung in the air, ominous and vague. His attempts to get closer to the quarry area again were subtly thwarted. A new checkpoint established nearby, citing vague security concerns. A sudden field exercise diverting movement from that sector. These weren't direct orders to him, but the effect was the same. The area was becoming quietly cordoned off. Whoever operated the phantom train, their secrecy was paramount, and perhaps they were aware someone was listening. Around this time, Corporal Jenkins, a fellow operator with whom Arthur had shared a heavily redacted version of his signal logs, received sudden transfer orders. Urgent reassignment, no details given. Jenkins was gone within hours. Arthur couldn't shake the feeling that Jenkins' transfer was connected, a loose end being neatly tied up. The thought was chilling. How many others might have stumbled upon this, only to be silenced or moved away? The idea began to solidify. Perhaps he would become the lone survivor of this knowledge, not by chance, but by a dangerous combination of luck and obscurity. What could justify such extreme measures? Arthur's mind raced through possibilities. Was it a clandestine Allied operation, perhaps involving captured scientists or technology spirited away from the advancing Soviets? Or German commandos, cut off but still operating, using forgotten lines for infiltration or escape? Could it be related to the resistance, moving crucial supplies or personnel under the noses of both sides? The term Unit 731 echoed strangely. He felt he'd heard it somewhere before, a half-remembered whisper from a news report, associated with horrifying rumors from the Pacific Theater. But surely that couldn't be connected here in Europe? The nature of the active cargo remained the terrifying unknown at the heart of the enigma. Was it weapons? People? Something plundered, or something built? The sheer, suffocating secrecy felt disproportionate to any conventional wartime necessity he could imagine. The strain was beginning to show. Arthur grew thinner, his eyes shadowed by lack of sleep and heightened anxiety. He performed his duties correctly, but his mind was elsewhere, constantly replaying the dots and dashes, searching for patterns. He felt increasingly isolated, custodian of a secret that felt both vitally important and incredibly dangerous. He had to know more. He felt inexplicably responsible for understanding the message carried by the phantom train. If you believe Arthur is right to pursue this, despite the danger, let us know in the comments. What could Unit 731 signify in the European theater? Share your theories. If you're still captivated by this deepening mystery, type "secret train" below. One rain-lashed evening, huddled over his receiver during a lull, the signal returned. Fainter this time, almost overwhelmed by static, but it was different. Shorter, more urgent. Using the framework he'd painstakingly uncovered, Arthur deciphered fragments amidst the noise. Omega compromised. Protocol siren. Final transmission. Then, abruptly, silence. Not the usual fading out. A sudden cut, as if the power source had been severed. The phantom signal, the ghost that had haunted the airwaves, was gone. Arthur stared at his notes, the final fragments chilling him to the bone. Omega compromised. Protocol siren. Final transmission. It wasn't just a signal. It was a narrative reaching its end. A disaster unfolding in code. He looked at the date. It coincided with reports of a fierce, localized skirmish erupting unexpectedly near the quarry area just hours before. He knew then he couldn't wait any longer. Whatever the phantom train carried, whatever protocol siren meant, the story had reached its crisis point. He had to see track Omega for himself. The final, abrupt silence of the phantom signal was more terrifying than its cryptic transmissions. Omega compromised. Protocol siren. Final transmission. The words, deciphered through the arcane logic of the forgotten railway code, painted a picture of disaster, coupled with the confirmed reports of a sudden, vicious firefight near the old quarry. A skirmish that appeared on no official reports Arthur could later access. The message spurred him into action. Under the cover of pre-dawn darkness and the chaos of distant artillery fire, Arthur slipped away from his post, armed only with his flashlight, his wits, and the terrible weight of the fragmented code. He moved towards the coordinates of track Omega, the hidden spur line from the old map, drawn by an invisible thread of destiny. As he approached the wooded hillside, the air grew thick with the acrid smell of gunpowder and something else, something metallic and faintly chemical. The signs of battle were fresh and brutal. Spent cartridges littered the ground, a chaotic mix of German Mauser rounds, Allied .30 caliber, and strangely, casings of a type he didn't recognize. Patches of earth were scorched, ancient trees bore fresh scars from ricochets, and ominous dark stains soaked into the leaf litter near the tunnel entrance the old map had hinted at. The silence here felt heavy, unnatural, the aftermath of violence swift and absolute. He found the spur line track, warped and twisted by explosions, leading into the gaping maw of the quarry tunnel. And there, partially inside the tunnel, partially derailed off the damaged tracks, was the train. It wasn't a ghost, not spectral, but it was deeply unsettling. Older rolling stock, heavily modified, painted flat, non-reflective gray that seemed to absorb the dim light, bearing no insignias of any nation. One carriage, built more like a reinforced container than passenger or cargo car, was violently breached, its thick metal door torn outwards as if from an internal explosion or a desperate attempt to contain something within. Hesitantly, Arthur approached the opening, flashlight beam cutting through the darkness. What he saw inside burned itself into his memory forever. It wasn't gold, weapons, or prisoners in the conventional sense. It was a makeshift laboratory, horrific and chillingly sterile despite the damage. Strange gleaming equipment lay smashed. Glass vials crunched underfoot, and thick, binder-like books lay scattered, their pages filled with dense notes, diagrams of human anatomy, and formulae mixing German and, inexplicably, Japanese characters. The designation he deciphered echoed with sudden, sickening clarity. Unit 731. Not a place, but the infamous Biological and Chemical Warfare Research Unit of the Imperial Japanese Army, known for its horrific human experimentation, a horror supposedly confined to the Pacific Theater. Yet here were its remnants, being transported across war-torn Europe on a secret train, using a forgotten code. The active cargo wasn't just materials, it was the monstrous legacy itself, perhaps including live samples or even researchers being exfiltrated or transferred in a desperate, unholy alliance or captured by a clandestine allied group seeking to exploit their knowledge. Protocol siren likely signified a catastrophic containment breach, or the train being attacked by forces trying to capture or destroy this terrible secret. Suddenly, voices. Sharp, low commands in American accented English, but for men moving with ruthless efficiency, wearing uniforms stripped of insignia. They were sanitizing the site, collecting bodies, some German, some Allied, some Asian, and systematically destroying evidence, including the scattered books and equipment with incendiary devices. Arthur realized this was a cover-up at the highest, most secret level. He heard a snippet. Classified above top secret. No witnesses erase Omega. He knew, with icy certainty, that if he were found, he would become just another casualty, another part of the erasure. He backed away slowly, melting into the dense woods, the strange metal shard he'd found earlier, now feeling like a burning coal in his pocket, perhaps a unique component from the specialized carriages. He fled, carrying a secret too horrifying, too complex for the black and white narratives of the war. In the weeks that followed, official inquiries into the localized skirmish were brief and inconclusive, citing enemy remnants or mistaken identity. No mention of a train, tunnel, or unusual cargo. Records were altered or vanished. Arthur, through a combination of luck, keeping his head down, and the sheer unbelievability of what he knew, survived the war. He never spoke of Track Omega, of the Phantom Signal, or the chilling meaning of Unit 731, found where it should never have been. Others who might have known pieces, Jenkins, perhaps soldiers involved in the initial firefight before the cleanup crew arrived, seemingly disappeared into the vast machinery of post-war bureaucracy or met unexplained ends. Arthur Davies became the sole, unwilling archivist of the Phantom Train's final journey. He carried the weight of that silent, erased history for decades, the dots and dashes forever echoing in the quiet moments, a testament to the dark operations hidden beneath the grand narrative of the war. The Phantom Signal was silenced, but for one man, its message would never truly fade. What other secrets lie buried in the battlefields, hidden in fragmented codes, or the memories of lone survivors? The past is never truly silent if we listen closely enough. Secrets like the Phantom Train signal are etched in the margins of history, whispers waiting for a voice. If you believe these untold stories deserve to be brought into the light, that the search for truth matters, then subscribe to our channel. Become part of a community dedicated to uncovering the hidden narratives, the forgotten signals, the echoes, and the static. Join us as we continue to listen.